March the 12th, 2026. Guys, you're looking at retaliatory strikes by Israel. This is over Baghdad, Lebanon, and they're striking the proxies of Iran there after they shot about 100 missiles south and into Israel overnight. Everybody's been saying yesterday and the day before it was going to be the big days of the entire conflict. Now, this is, again, going on in Lebanon, just off on the other side of the smoke, guys, is the Mediterranean. So these are coastal cities, both here and in the other cities that are being struck. But in the hearts of them seems to be where the terrorists are stationing. Again, they'd love to hide behind civilian shields. Now let's take a look at what's going on as far as the oil in the Persian Gulf. Now, Iran is also hitting freighters there in the Persian Gulf. And this is coming from the media office of the Iraqi ports. There's on one side there. And so this is what we got, guys, going on now. Iran said they were not going to surrender, not unconditionally, but probably under any means. And so what they're doing now is attacking everybody else. It's, again, another ship on fire. We have seen this before, but now the attacks are increasing. The reason I'm doing the video is because we've been told in the news and everywhere else that Iran has used about 80% of its munitions, but possibly the bigger stuff they've kept for later. And that's for sure. I want to show you another video that I saw coming from Oman. This is the game changer. Now, I saw something in the flick of just in a second, split second going on during the barrage. And so I slowed everything down by 4 times, took a look at what was going on there, and then did some analysis and did some searching to find out what really happened. So let's go to Oman now and look at the most vital port they have, and it's outside of the straits. It's a matter of fact, it was inside what was called the safe zone. In other words, ships not going up into the Straits of Hormuz, coming in out of the oceans. They could stop over to the left there where Oman is. If you're coming into the straits, to the left side is that nation down through there, and have safe ports. Major oil exporting going on, imports, and all of that, ship harborage. And they got hit really hard. At first they said it was drones, but I think we're going to find out something different. And we reached past the 700-mile safe zone with very sophisticated hypersonic missiles. It was not drones. That's what they were trying to say from the port authorities there. And this is at Raisut. Again, a huge petrochemical plant. And you know, I had to look at it. And then I got the G-maps out and measured the mileage from Iran to the strikes you're about to look at. And it was over the closest point. If they fired from the beach in Iran was 700 miles. So drones, the way this hit, are definitely out of the question. But it became very clear when I slowed down the imaging. Now, no one else, you guys, and Tina's seen it, but you guys are the first people to see this slowed down video, and then we're going to go into the details of what you're seeing. Now, check this out, guys. Notice at the top, they're reporting drone strikes from the Oman State TV. Notice that? This is not drone strikes, guys. This field is 700 miles from the closest point that Iran has to this location. It took sophisticated hypersonic missiles to do this. I'll tell you why. Again, just let it run through. And we're going to slow it down even closer. You may have seen something just then out of the corner of your eye, and that's what made me go back and slow this thing down big time. There was another one. But again, they reported drones did this. There's only a couple drones they have called the Shahed that could make it that far, but they can't penetrate this type of heat and smoke. Here's one of the objects right here. These are what it has been described to me as hypersonic missiles that Iran is not supposed to still have. Not only that, they use the Chinese guidance system, which is like our GPS. Look at these falling in slow motion. I'll tell you what they are. Check that out. But they're used, instead of like the US GPS for your tracking, China has one called Bandai or something like that. and Iran has tied in with them a while back. So they have a satellite tracking situation too. Now again, a drone cannot fly through this smoke and heat. It couldn't see if it could, but the turbulence of it would push it way aside. It would have to take something coming from straight above with extreme kinetic energy, very large. You could tell at that distance how large these white missiles are, and that is the largest thing they have. And it can reach 700 miles, but they went and took the safety zone for the entire Persian Gulf and the Oman Gulf out of commission. Again, they came in with reports of a drone strike. You just saw what really hit. And these missiles are designed by Iran and whoever's helping them to go so high above a target, traveling so fast, unlike a drone, which would be a surface type, device. And they're very slow, except for the the turbo drones, but they would run out of fuel, they say, before they got to this point, but not the white darts. That's what they're called, white darts. And what those did, they came in, guys, after the initial explosions. And it was explained to me what that is it's called a double tap kill shot. So you got all of these tanks catching on fire from a few missiles that hit before what we saw. The camera, we had already turned to this point. Then we saw, I think I counted 7 altogether, but I was going frame by frame, not just slow-mo. What happens, and I was asked, people I'm talking to did not see the video. I described it, and they said, what you're seeing are these very large Iranian hypersonic missiles. They're designed to travel that far and to come in groups, get above the target, out of sight, turn off all the engines, and it becomes a very heavy 30 to 40 foot dart. And what they do, guys, you see the fuel's burning now before that arrived. They go through because it's a kinetic shock. When you on these oil tanks, you've got floating lids. And they really help with a couple things, but one is to suppress fire. Say a drone hits the side of a tank, that lid starts to sink down as the oil pours out, even though there's a fire, but it helps suppress it. Then you can put the fires out, but you still got some infrastructure left. But what happened with those white darts that we saw dropping, guys, they used kinetic energy because you didn't see an explosion as they hit the ground, and that was described to me as well. They come down and penetrate not just the top shell that's already burning, it goes into the bases and through the concrete, shatters everything. The oil spills out the sides and creates rivers of oil so that the firefighters cannot get in there and try to cool off any of these tanks because you die instantly. So this is already happening. We see all those white darts come in, and it was precision. It said it had to be very sophisticated tracking because it could not see. In other words, each tank had a GPS location marker via satellite. And regardless of the smoke or the fire or anything else, when they got up there and turned those engines off, it increased their speed up to Mach 4 or Mach 5. So the kinetic energy was that much stronger. And they dove through and knocked out the ability for this thing to come back anytime soon. Again, the major shipping people are leaving. They don't know when it's going to reopen. But my point was, this is not a drone strike, what we're seeing. And this is just another view. But when we saw the sections of it where the white objects were dropping into it, knocking out the bases, it was fully inflamed at that point. And that's what they wanted. Nothing could see, like radar couldn't see them coming in because of the smoke. They were dropping too fast anyway. Hypersonics traveling 700 miles. Let's take a look at something. Now, here's Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE is here, and Oman has this section. Again, right here where this happened, there had been a 700-mile safe zone drawn around this area from the center of where the missiles were going. Everything outside of that was considered a safe zone until this happened. Let me pull this up. And this was down in southern Oman. It wasn't up here across from the straits or anything. So they reached out, hypersonics, came in here. Here's Race Suit. There's part of the falls there, but Race Suit's where it hit. The big tankers, let me see where I saw them. They were in this area. Right here is a group. See that? That kind of looks like what we were seeing. It was either here or here. It was the larger size ones. You could see them. That was probably the video half mile or a mile away. But now it's taken out this area. It's a beautiful area. It's called Shalala Port right there. And the Shalala authorities have said this is permanently closed until we don't know when. Now, that's the refining capabilities. I think they may still have a little storage, but it won't be coming from this area. And what they did, they thought this was, again, being outside of the 700 miles, this would be safe. And that's why they weren't risking some of these other ports up along this area. Again, this is very far away. And again, I took the measurement distance. Let me do it again to make sure I knew it wasn't a drone. And so we'll go from, say, here, we'll go to the closest point. Let me pull this around here. Here, again, is Shalala Port. Here's where our tanks were, down in this area right there. Let me go back up. 664 to 95 miles. That's about the closest point, but I'm not saying they came from here. They could have come from anywhere up in here, and you quickly get into the 700-mile distance. So if they came from Iran, like we said, they could have came, from here, the very southern point, at 737 or 739 miles from there to where the oil tanks are. So these things were very high, very fast. At 730 miles, they could have been shot down if they were drones. But these things were shot straight up, very fast, got over the target, synchronized for them to hit at almost the same time. Remember that I slowed the video down by 4 times and you could see them hit, but you couldn't see that in the naked eye except for one white blur, and it would be hard to tell what was happening. But it was described to me that we just seen very powerful missiles, and I'll show you what I was told. And guys, this is the type of event I've been talking about, doing something to these areas that you can't fix in a week or two or a month or two and get the gas prices back down. They rose up $8 or $9 already back today because of this port strike. It says the Mena Petroleum Facility has suffered catastrophic and irreversible damage with at least 8 large tanks fully engulfed. And that was that double row of the 4 large ones that were in the image. The Port of Shalala has officially suspended all container and cargo operations indefinitely. Despite the scale of the fires, again, fog of war, no casualties have been reported among port staff as of this afternoon. And again, they're talking about the technological partnership between Beijing and Tehran being viewed by analysts as a live lab for testing advanced guidance systems against Western defenses. I can't argue against that at all, but we do know they are tied in with China, and that's where China gets most of its oil, at least 50%. Now, oil prices, Brent crude declined back up to over $100 a barrel, 101 at 59 at peak. And guys, that's been about an hour or so ago I've been putting this together, so we'll check it before we get off the video. Stock markets indices have tumbled. Oil goes up, markets go down. Why? Because everything's fixing to get very expensive. But the major indices tumble, with the Dow Jones dropping 570 points today as investors fear what? A prolonged energy shock, guys. That's what we're talking about. Global giants like MSC and Maersk have suspended Gulfport operations as the 700-mile range no longer provides safety against the high-accuracy vertical needles. And when I described what I saw, this is what I was told. And they're talking about how precise the Chinese system is, tracking the Bindao 3 is what it's called. Anyway, the military tier signal offers centimeter-level accuracy, allowing for the direct hits you observed on specific fuel tanks through the thick smoke. And again, they get up there, they're GPS guided, they kill the engines. What does that do? No heat tracer for aerial for them to be shot down. They're not leaving a heat source. Plus, the smoke and the fire does not affect them at all. And if you see something moving through smoke very quickly, a lot of times you'll see a wisp or a curl of smoke behind it, unless they're supersonic. Then they're moving so fast, nothing happens. Every element in front of it is dissolved instantly, but there's no movement. We didn't see that there either. But it says anti-jamming, unlike civilian-grade GPSs, which were heavily disrupted during the 2025 conflict, this BDS-3 B3A signal is considered essential and unjammable due to complex frequency hopping. They're moving it around too quick to find the jamming frequency, as my huskies are fussing about a snack. So we're talking about the Kings of the East. Short message service. Bin Dao allows Iranian command nodes to communicate with drones or missiles even if local networks are down, potentially allowing for mid-flight redirection. Strategic independence. By using BDAO, Iran avoids the risk of the U.S. or EU or Israel from cutting off satellite signals during an active conflict. Their eyes are still wide open. I don't care what anybody says. Their radars may have been hit, but China's has not. It's like we have, the internet here. You've got different planes, but again, Starlink, doesn't matter what happens. There's so many up there that one of them's going to get the signal through to you correctly. Now, let's go beyond the drone hits from the news there. The official damage assessments. This is coming from Raysut and Salalah now. It says multiple fuel storage tanks at the Mena Petroleum facility were heavily damaged and set ablaze. Direct hits. Local reports and verified footage confirms at least 2 to 3 storage silos were engulfed in massive fires with thick black smoke plumes visible for miles. But once they exploded those tanks, that fire spread like a river all through the area, thanks to the kinetic impact of the white darts. It says how many state media and security sources report no casualties among port staff or emergency responders. That's good. No damage to merchant vessels docked at the port had been reported. They were strategic at 700 miles to hit an exact pinpoint area. They didn't need the vessels. They needed to take out what the vessels were there for. It says the Ministry of Energy and Minerals stated the domestic petroleum supply remains unaffected and fuel availability is normal. They didn't get all the storage tanks, but their capabilities were wiped out. There may be a little left there, and I think that was one of the largest places in the region, again outside of the 700-mile warning zone. Now, coming out this afternoon, a report from the Sultan's Armed Forces that has confirmed catastrophic and irreversible damage. Again, it says this smoke you saw is now a permanent pillar over the Dhofar coastline. You know how they'll spread. Again, Maersk is out. Other giants have officially suspended all operations. You don't bring a $200 million ship into a harbor where these large white darts can drop vertically into the fuel farm at any moment. They got the heck out of there, guys. And again, the description of no flames coming out of the rocket, right? They had cut that off. They were above the target. They were GPS electronically guided to hit exactly within centimeters of where they were supposed to hit. Nothing could stop them. You couldn't see them. And the big trick was to drop it through the smoke, like we saw. And they're saying that, again, it looks like total liquidation mission. But 700-mile message they sent to put 7 or more of these 30-foot darts, as they call them, into a specific fuel farm from 700 miles away is a master class in satellite-guided GPS precision. Again, they're testing China's new stuff. How much AI is involved in that? No safe haven. It says it was the safe backup for the Strait of Hormuz. Now it is no longer a shield. And the infrastructure death says by hitting the center and the outer edges of a burning field, these ensured that Mena Petroleum facility could never be repaired. In other words, the silent darts came in there through the flames and the smoke and shattered everything below it. And the description fits what they're calling the Fatah 110 or the Zolfaghar ballistic missiles. That's their two 30-foot long ones, or a little over 30 foot, and very heavy, guys. So once they drop, you're going to have an explosion on them, but they hit kinetically first to shatter the infrastructure at hypersonic speed. And then they explode, adding fuel to the fire. Now, another report's coming in. It says total liquidation again. The first wave is what they're reporting were drones. These were not drones at 700 miles. They have air defense systems. These were another set of the same rockets. They were set in two waves called a double tap. It says the first ones created the fire. The last ones we saw were used to pulverize the infrastructure, the pipes, the concrete, and tanks so that nothing could be salvaged or rebuilt for years. That 700-mile warning again, launching these ballistic missiles from Iran to hit specifically these tanks in Shalala is a massive escalation. It proves that Raisut is no longer a safe haven for global shipping. Now, again, 100 missiles coming in out of Israel. They attack Lebanon to the north. I don't have full reports yet on what the U.S. Air Force has been doing in the Tehran area. I'll look into that. We'll get it into the evening report. But this is a major news update. And let's look now. Like I said, it's been an hour or so before I saw the markets. They're very volatile right now. This is not going to help. Plus, it's going to escalate the conflict. Now, this is live at 1:43 p.m. Central Daylight Time today. It rained hard last night. Tornadoes came through. We didn't get hit by anything. We got some limbs down. But now the sun's out and the Huskies are playing back outside, and then they'll run in and bark a little bit for another snack. Here's the latest on the Dow, though, DJIA. The Dow 600 points as oil jumps. Rand says it will keep the strait shut. It's minus 651 there, S&P 88. And NASDAQ down 352. But let's look at the oil. Yesterday on the Brent oil, we were seeing numbers in the 90s and the 80s on oil. Here on Brent, we're up $8.89. Just went up on oil. Is $8.74. And on the Murban crude, guys, that's the Saudi jet fuel that many people use. It had went back down to 101 yesterday, so it is $16.61 now. So we had a temporary reprieve from the escalating oil and petroleum prices. I didn't think it would last long unless they could call an immediate ceasefire or something like that and make some kind of deal. So we got to hold on, guys. You've got to prepare. And for 20 years, we've talked about preparing with water filters, survival food, things like that. And I'm not going to try to sell you anything here. And people have said, well, we've had our stuff 5 or 6 years and nothing's ever happened. Guys, this may be the time that you need it more than any other time in your history, because the world is on edge right now, and it's going to be an economic war that leads to possibly nuclear conflict if we're not very careful. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. I'm going to get updates on what is happening in Iran itself and in the local areas, and I'll get that up this afternoon. Between then, keep your heads up. Be safe.